Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of the BS of Entrepreneurship Podcast. We are so excited this week to have with us Mr. Eddie. I messed it up. Eddie Davenport. But before we jump into that, I just want to let you know I'm Frankie P.
I'm Maria P.
Yes, but let me do the proper introduction. Now, Eddie, he has been the marquee who's who, and as an all marquee who's who by our biographical.
Biography.
Volumes.
Just who's who.
He's been in a who's who. Yes. Mr. Davenport is a proud owner of ELD Touring Enterprises, which was established in 1999. Prior to this role, he was employed in various capacities, including as a tour guide in Washington, D.C. from 1989 to present as an educator. Mr. Davenport was introduced to the business by his father, who was also a tour guide. In his capacity at ELD Touring Enterprises, Mr. Davenport's area of expertise resides in Old Washington, which existed from 1850 to 1960. We're going to jump into that. In addition to educating people on tours, he is responsible for administrative work, planning itineraries, performing research, and taking photographs. Mr. Davenport attributes his success as a tour guide to his genuine love for sharing information and making people feel comfortable and happy. Let's give a warm BS of Entrepreneurship. Welcome to Mr. Eddie Davenport, baby. Hey.
All right.
We in the house. Yes, sir. So we're gonna jump into this, and we're gonna get deep down into not only you being an educator,
Mm-hmm.
A tour guide,
Mm-hmm.
knowing about. So we want to get some history about Washington D.C. too. That we're gonna jump into that.
Some things that we don't know.
Some things that we don't know. But for those who don't know who Eddie Davenport, please let us know.
Well, born and raised in the DMV. Born and raised in the DMV. Cousins to this man right here. So
Didn't know if you want me to tell y'all that.
yeah,
so
we're gonna go ahead and throw that out.
You're gonna throw that in there.
We'll go ahead and throw that in there. Been a tour guide since 1989, so this is year number 34.
Wow.
Year number 34, and taught for 18 years. So kind of covered two areas that basically my parents covered. My mom being an educator, my dad being an educator and a tour guide.
Which one do you like better? Or did you like better?
I still like them both.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing, I get school groups. And when I get school groups, that kind of takes care of the classroom thing. Then, and I get asked to come in to do some special programs from time to time. So the one that I get asked to come in to do a lot of revolves around 9/11. And, we'll kind of talk a little bit comparing 9/11 to the pandemic, because that kind of changed the industry in a lot of ways. But I miss the classroom. I don't miss the bureaucratic BS. I'm not even going to hold back on that.
What were you teaching?
I taught at Frederick Douglass High School, Prince George's County. 3 years as a paraprofessional. Then from the Heart Christian School for 5 years. Yeah, it was 5 years. 3rd grade, 5th grade, athletic director, girls basketball coach. Then took the break, and then the last stop was Shabbat Christian Academy. Mm-hmm. And that was from 2004 to 2012. So it's been 11 years since I've been in the classroom.
Oh, okay.
Been 11 years.
And you just do it now from time to time?
When I get asked to do certain things.
Oh, okay.
So that's it. I've had offers to come back, but it hasn't been the right offer. And then I said, if I wasn't back in the classroom by the time I turned 50, I am not going back. That's going to be me walking in, and I will be the one on the news saying, he hit the student. we don't understand. So I just said,
we don't understand.
I can't go there. Can't go there. But, on the on the sightseeing side of things, it was my dad.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one that got me into it. People have asked me the story. I put the story out there. It is still, for me, when I think about it, yeah, that would kind of make everybody change their move. My last summer job before being a tour guide, I was at the National Zoo. I was at the Panda Gift Shop. I was a business major, so I was actually working in the Panda Gift Shop, handling retail. Downwind from the Elephant House. Ling Ling and Sing Sing, possibly pregnant. And in 88, if we remember the summer of 88, it's hot. Not hot, hot. So downwind from the Elephant House,
Oh my God.
hot. With little kids coming up, is the panda pregnant?
I'm gonna go driving. I'm gonna go. I think it's better to go drive.
So I mean, what happened was, what basically happened was, I made no money. I dealt with a lot of garbage. Just that commute back and forth from District Heights over to the zoo was already hard enough. And then, and of course, during that summer, I was only 2 minutes away from the house. Lady backed out her driveway, took my car out. So I'm on the Metro Rail till the car gets repaired because I got to have that when I go back to school. So I'm packing up, getting ready to make my way back down to Hampton. And here comes my dad, packing the stuff. I said, while you're studying, you got to get ready for this test. I want you to take the guys' test when you get back. We're going to be pulling some strings because typically they don't like, insurance doesn't like doing 21 with driving and everything. So we're going to get all that worked out for you. And so at the time I take the test, it's maybe 3 weeks after my 21st birthday. And for a short time period, I was the youngest person to ever pass that test.
Oh wow.
So there's actually a
Congratulations.
license and certificate that you have to take in order to become
Used
a
to
tour guide.
used to be. The climate has changed. As you know, things evolve, and as things kept evolving, one of the things that happened in the 2010s, Segs in the City, Segway tours. Well, they're bringing kids in from college break.
Okay.
And those kids don't have time to take the exam and then get the badge and then be able to give tours. So they're giving them the narration and everything to go ahead and do it. So they were getting violations and tickets. They finally ended up going to district court. Lower court held up the judgment and went to the District Court of Appeals, 3 judges. Those 3 judges sat down and listened to the case, and one judge said something that just blew the whole thing apart. What's to stop a homeless person from getting a tape recorder with all the information there, having people pay him to walk, and all he has to do is press play? What's to prevent him from doing that?
Right.
Everything turned to the First Amendment, and there were other cases that came up. Same thing happened in New Orleans. Same thing was happening up in Philadelphia. You got a couple of places where they tried to have the oversight in that way, and then the next judge made the comment saying, "Well, you know, y'all don't even have people out doing the oversight, and guess what? TripAdvisor will take care of all that for you." That's the people familiar with TripAdvisor, Yelp. Their reviews. That'll take care of it right there.
Okay.
And so the court said, you don't have to get your guy's badge.
Wow.
Now, immediately for me, I was trying to decide, do I really need to go back and renew my badge or don't I? I'm like, by that time, I had already had my badge over 20 years. But I was like, why am I going to give the DC government $250 and it no longer matters? The reason you have the reason at that point you have the badge is the perks that come with it from some of the places. And I knew everybody because I had been around so long.
Okay.
So I could at any point in time could go back, retake the test, get the badge back. But I'm like, anybody goes to TripAdvisor, all you see are 5 stars.
So how did it change the landscape when the students were allowed to just basically come in and drive, and compared to the people who already had their certificates?
There's a little friction there, but now it's like you look up and some companies are going to require you to have your guy's badge. So like Old Town Trolley requires all of their drivers. CDL is going to be one thing because they're driving the trolley bus. but they also want their guides to have guides badges.
Okay.
So
to
tell
be
us about this
licensed.
guys badge. It's
So-
it's so that you know all different parts of the city or
It's
something.
it's a 100
History.
a 110 question test,
Wow.
Uh-huh.
and it is the history of Washington D.C.
Okay.
And it. Okay, this is me talking 34 years in. It's not that hard, but to get prepared for it, this is not something you're gonna do 2 weeks. You're gonna have to do a deep dive.
Mm.
We I've worked with a lot of younger guides to kind of help them to be ready for the test. But then you pass the test. Now, when it comes time to do the tour, how you use all that information. So like one of the questions, if I can remember offhand, one of the questions at that time, and I think it's still on the test, asked for the height of the Washington Monument. So
Okay.
so
let me
now
write this down.
so now it's because it's electrical. Because now it's done on computer.
Mhm.
You got your A, B, C, D, E. Monument's height's 500. The monument's height on the test is 555 feet. The monument's height, based on when they did the measurement in '99, is 555 feet 5 5/8 inches. So
They're that specific.
they did a laser measurement.
Oh
They did a
wow.
laser
Okay.
measurement. So they were
Okay.
doing. So that was during the time period when they were doing the renovation of the monument
I remember
in '99. So it's those are the things that show up on the test. But just passing the test doesn't do anything for you as a tour guide.
Mhm.
You got to have stories that go behind it.
So,
So you create your own story?
yeah, that's what I was
Your narrative, yeah, you put together your own narrative. I share with younger guys, you got to put together a narrative that is based around your life.
Mm.
So I'm up on U Street with when people want to do an African American flavor and everything. So I'm there by Bohemian Caverns. I'm over by Industrial Bank, Lincoln Theater, Howard Theater. And anybody who's been up to U Street now knows that this is not the U Street we grew up on.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
And I'll get to a place, and it's like the pickup I had last weekend. When I'm pulling out, I'm just off of T Street, and they were like, "Yeah, it's kind of crowded up here." I say, "Yeah, I've been here when it's been crowded, and I've been here at a time when it wasn't all that nice up here." To the point where I had to explain to my dad where this bullet hole came from in the car coming from the Howard Theater.
Oh, no, we have to put a pin right there. You have to tell us what happened that you got fired on.
I wasn't trying to get fired
Okay,
on.
tell us-
I was in the crossfire.
So okay, so what
Right.
happened? So what happened?
I was leaving from the Howard,
So you
from Essence, from seeing Essence at the Howard Theater.
Okay, so you were literally coming from
It's only 2 blocks from where the people were staying. I was only 2 blocks away from the theater.
So you wasn't doing the tour.
I wasn't doing it.
Okay.
No, this is back in the day.
Okay.
This is back. This is my
The
dad
late
finally
80s.
got the real story. He finally got the real story. What, just after I got married?
Mhm.
So that was took 15 years for the actual story to come out, because it's like, yeah, I didn't tell you that's how the hole got into the front fender. Because wait, you were driving downtown to Howard Theater. Yeah, I told you I was going to Howard Theater. He said. Then he looked at me and said, "You said you were going to the Howard Theater
Mhm.
with some friends. You didn't say you'd be the one driving my car." I said, "Oh, I didn't mention that." So, what much he could do now? But it was. But yeah, that was when U Street, all up in that area. You just got out of the heroin thing
Mhm.
in the '70s. The corridor, especially over by Ben's, is all torn up as they're putting in the U Street Cardozo Station, and still Howard Theater is drawing a few people. It wasn't. It's not like it is now.
Mhm.
It was still in the old theater format, but it was not nowhere close to what it was in its heyday in the 1930s and the 1960s. And so, yeah, you go see the show, you leave the show. You left the show, and hopefully nothing was going to pop off. But that particular night, something popped off, and I ended up in the crossfire.
Wow.
And all I did was just duck, and then all I heard was psh, and I'm looking, and I'm like, oh, this ain't nice.
And obviously nobody in your car got hit.
Nah, we were still outside the car. That was the whole thing for me. I was still outside the car. So.
That was even worse.
But yeah, you're taking, you go up in that area now. You got Airbnbs all over the places, and then you start telling folks this is where people love the stories. That's why I say is the information is one thing, but when you got a lifetime living in the area, you got stories. You got some houses up in Petworth that look beautiful, over $3 million, and back in the day, it was a crack house. And I'm picking up there, and I'm like, why are you laughing? You just don't want to know. You don't want to know.
So are most of your tours around the city or more focused towards downtown, the main areas like the Monument, the Capitol, the Lincoln Memorial, the title bases?
Yeah, the major tour is going to be down in the National.
Okay.
That's going to be major. That's everything.
Do you do the cherry blossom? Do you tour that area or bring people? Don't do that. People love the cherry blossom.
Some brain damage. That's what I call it, brain damage.
We're supposed to have 6 weeks of the cherry blossoms this year.
Ain't gonna have nobody 6 weeks. I'm just sitting down there. I've been, what is it? As warm as it was in February, I dropped the group off at the Jefferson Memorial. And since I'm over there at the tidal basin, I walked up to one of the trees. I looked at it. I was like, they're about to sit down here and say that some of these trees are in stage 1. And again, it goes back to you've been doing this so long, you can almost.
They did say that.
And when they said stage 1, and now I done heard, we're getting to the pedicule stage. Like that means these things are going to try to come out. And the bet we got going downtown is St. Patrick's Day.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not going to be at peak, but
so take me through that because this is the first time I've ever heard that. Take me from stage. So how many stages are there?
There's 6 stages for the cherry blossom trees.
Okay.
So stage 1 is when you start seeing the green buds. Stage 2, they kind of get real fat, begin to open up. Stage 3, you start seeing a little bit of pink flowers. Stage 4, they're starting to open up. Stage 5, they're about, maybe 50% open. And then stage 6, you're at full bloom. And
how long do they stay full bloom?
Roughly 10 days. But what a lot of people don't realize with the cherry blossoms especially, everybody talks about peak bloom. That's when 70% of the trees around the tidal basin are open. Once you get to about 20-25% of the trees, pictures are set. You're good with photographs at that point. And I always say I get crazy. Once I see first few trees come out, I'll sit down and tell somebody, you want a picture with a cherry blossom tree? Yeah, but we don't sell it. Just leave it to me. And then I know right where to go. I know which trees are probably open. Oh, we got pictures with the cherry blossom. And then after the fact, I still know where to find a couple of trees. But it's a strange time period in DC. It's a strange, all of a sudden people start showing up that don't ever show up downtown. People who are getting married are trying to take wedding pictures under the trees. I have a problem with that if your wedding is in March, April, May, June, even July. You get married in December. Why are you out here? Why are you taking pictures with these trees out here? And you better hope you last to December. So it's it gets a little crazy, and it's and because cherry blossoms occur at the same time, spring break groups are coming in from schools. It's like the perfect storm for insanity. And people don't realize, Park Service makes changes. This is the second year that West Basin Drive is going to be where all of these stage activities are. But West Basin Drive is better known to folks where the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial is.
Okay.
Oh,
so that street is going to be eliminated for, I don't even remember the date when all that starts. But it's that'll be about midway through the Cherry Blossom Festival. But getting into West Potomac Park is where everything changes because it'll go one way. So one way in, one way out to avoid traffic backups. Didn't work well last year. It got tied up in one area.
Well, let me ask you this: if someone were worth looking at a new person trying to get into the transportation, what steps do you think they should probably take? They
need to take a look at the at the demographic they want to deal with. So like, for me, on the transportation side of things, if somebody calls me, I'm using the network that I have. Just telling you earlier, one of my former students, BJ Page, he has a saying where he says, "Your network is your net worth."
Say that again, brother. Say that again.
Your network is your net worth. BJ, I hope you see this. I'm putting it out there, right there. But the network that I put together as far as guides and transportation allows me to do the bus thing. But when people are doing it to where I want to start my own transportation business, you need to know what your demographic, your target is going to be. Some people think, I'm just going to buy a bus and that's going to be it. No. Everything that goes into dealing with transportation, insurance, fuel, maintenance, scheduling, drivers, marketing, yeah. All of that plays a role, and you have to know what it is and how it is, what it is you're targeting and how you're targeting it. And you don't go into it saying, I'm going to make a lot of money at first. No, that doesn't happen in transportation unless you're able to get contracts through different either government agencies or private businesses, schools, things like that.
How do they get contracts?
Well, here in DC, one of the things that's needed is what is called a WMATC certification, Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Commission. And they'll ask you, when you fill out that paperwork, you are literally telling them everything you're going to do as a business. And then if
is that only in DC?
That's for DC.
Okay.
That's for DC. Maryland has the Public Safety Commission, PSC, and there's one other one in Maryland. And then overall, sometimes we say, why deal on the local level? Just do the federal stuff, USDOT and the motor carrier setup. And so all of those certifications put you in a position to do different types of contract work, also handles regulations. That DOT number is a big thing because Department of Transportation can pull any vehicle over for DOT number and say, we want to check to see what your vehicle looks like. They'll check your brakes. They're checking for brake problems. They're checking for the person that's driving. They're checking to make sure in their manifest they haven't done over the hours they're supposed to do in the day. So like if I'm doing, let's say somebody hires me to do a private road trip. Say, we just want you in a minivan. We want you to take us from here to New York and back. Well, the minute I pick them up, I'm on the clock. So if they leave at 7 a.m. and they want to be back by, and they're saying we'll be back by 7 p.m., I got to have them back by 7 p.m. Because when 7:01 comes, I'm now in 13th hour and I'm out of compliance. 12 hours is the max. 12 hours is the max. And a lot of times drivers end up going over that time, and that's when you start hearing about all these wild accidents with the coaches, limousines, and everything. So it's the each piece of the puzzle makes it difficult to deal with transportation. You have to, one, understand that there are going to be times where you're not going to be working, and you have to figure out how to get those vehicles rolling. What are you going to do for your vehicle to keep going? I know in my case, one of the things that I loved because it meant I wasn't going to have to substitute anymore was Uber and Lyft. I was like, in 3 hours of Uber and Lyft, I was making as much as a substitute teacher because I knew how to. But again, for me, it was I knew where the people were. I took the experiences that I already had. So a lot of people who are doing that as a side hustle, they're like, well, all we got to do is get in and drive. But if you don't know the city, you're going to get frustrated.
Because you might go to an area where there is not a lot of people, and there's going to not be a lot of people ordering rides.
Yeah, and then the other thing too is if you're not a people person, last thing you need to be doing is anything that involves transport because it's just going to be that way. You're going to have people that will rub you the wrong way. For me, November 2020. Remember it. It was actually a return customer, but her true colors came out. from Texas, big Trump supporter with her and her friends. They had been drinking. So you know what happens. Alcohol makes you tell the truth. And of course, 2020 is when I learned about my diabetes. And so I have to remember to have snacks and everything with me. So the tour starts off, oh, we're happy to see you again, Eddie. And, it's the usual stuff. But we're going to be back here because, they're going to prove Trump won the election, all that. And I'm sitting down there like, how are you going to go ahead and believe this? I said, no, I'm going to let y'all go because, that's just how I do. But then one lady says, I'm so tired of the race card being played. If they don't like certain things, then, Eddie, you're black. How do you feel about it?
Wow. Yeah. Okay. I see that.
So needless to say, and my other guy,
Where's the end? When we're dropping you off?
my other guy that is with me, young lady, her dad and I go all the way back. Our fathers were tour guides together, so she's a third generation tour guide. She loves putting that in her bio. I'm a third generation tour guide. It's like, yeah, hi Tracy. So she's white and she's carrying the same garbage in her van. She's like, Eddie, where you go? Eddie, and then she's looking at me, and because we had just dropped off at the Lincoln Memorial, moved to the pickup point, and she's like, Eddie, you got it. How are you handling it? And she hears me scream. And livid. I'm just hot. I called my wife up. I'm like, you can't believe what these women are. They're just saying all this. You're black. How do you feel about it? And I'm going on. And all of a sudden she said, wife goes, calm down, Eddie. I was like, calm down. She's like, Eddie, I'm going to ask you something. Did you have something to eat before you went to work?
And your diabetes was...
I sat there like, hey, you know what? I don't know. It was a Snickers commercial at that point.
That would have been funny. You should have recorded it. That would have been funny. That would have been a funny Snickers commercial.
Went into my glove compartment, pulled out my snack, saddled me down. I was cool after that. I was able to go ahead and take everything. And the thing is, I always, whenever I'm in those situations, said I'm going to flip the script. And people aren't going to know it's happened, and they're going to end up giving me money that I, really didn't expect them to give me. One of the things I also learned too, because you deal with a lot of international visitors, people are like, I'm looking for a gratuity. I had to explain to my young guy that said, if they're from Europe, if they're from Australia, if they're from any place outside the United States, I said, we're the only fools asking for a tip and expecting it. We're the only fools that are doing that. Every place else in the world, you try to give somebody a gratuity, they may smack you in the face. No. And it's, once I started learning cultural things, then it's like, if folks from, like I got a family coming back from Australia that I had 3 years ago.
But let me ask you this, because and I want to kind of pivot and go towards, you were telling me about how Black started. Can you share that story with me on how?
So, well, the way
how blacks began, African Americans got into the transportation industry.
So the way the story goes, and this is really dealing with tours. When my dad got into it, there were guides before him, of course. Two of the guys, Alfonso and Murphy, they we're talking. They were literally doing tours, almost like my dad doing tours till they died. And one day I was, they're sitting down there and they're talking, and, we young bucks, we're doing all the work at that point, and they sitting down there talking. So I had finished up, and I'm sitting down, and I'm just listening and talking, and all of a sudden, first thing that caught me was when Mr. Murphy said, yeah, Georgetown was black. And I went, excuse me? Yeah, all the black people lived in Georgetown. All the white people were over in Anacostia. I was like, whoa, wait, fix this for me.
Yeah, when was this?
And I sat down. And I sat down and I thought, and I was listening to him. I was like, okay, so when your mom and dad and when my parents moved east of the river, they were like some of the first blacks east of the river. Because remember, white flight pushed from mid-city to east of the river to Prince George's County, then down to Charles and St. Mary's or Howard and Montgomery. That's how it worked. They moved out and moved a little bit further out, but as blacks moved in, then stuff started changing in those areas. So, they kept talking about what had changed over time in the city, and then they started talking about the story about how they got down in the area of the Ellipse, the Washington Monument, to be able to sell tours and take people on tours. And white guides have been doing it for a while. Jackie Kennedy gets in office and she's looking out and she's seeing only white guides here. And she informs the Park Service, you need to let some of these black guides come in here. And so I know Murphy and Alfonso, Mr. Harrison.
This was in the 60s.
This is like late 60s, early 70s, or mid 60s, early 70s. And so by the time we get to when my dad is doing tours, because it's a white guide that brings him in. Still remember Mr. Burley, his cigar, in that Volkswagen bus that he drove for tours. But he brings him in, and again, here comes the shift. So by the time I get downtown in '89, most of the independent guides are now black. Got 3 or 4 white guides. And that's about the same time Park Service decides they want to clamp down on solicitation laws. And solicitation because you're offering services and being paid for the service.
Okay.
And so,
wow.
and you can't solicit on national park property. So there were loopholes to get around everything.
So was that how they were considering that marketing?
So that was that time period. That time period, because remember, no internet, no anything, so everything was done face to face, and you had to be where the people were. And so, but all of a sudden they became, instead of it being, we're going to go by the spirit of the law, y'all aren't doing any real damage. The owner of the tour mobile started saying some things. The owner, and then you all of a sudden didn't have as many white guides down there with the black independent guides, and some of them were doing some shady things. Also, I don't want to go into all of how things got done then, but in essence, once the shift started coming, it really just coincided with the change in the demographic of the guy that was down there. As time moved forward, though,
Well, where did the white guys go?
Many of them aged out. That's the whole thing. It's like
transition.
And they weren't trying to bring anybody else down there. A matter of fact, my dad was really against me even doing tours. He was when I was getting ready to graduate. From Hampton. So it was like he knew I had interviewed with DuPont Chemical and would have been in pharmaceutical sales. They loved the idea that I had a chemistry background, and then they loved the idea that I had experience in sales and everything. And they were like, they had laid everything down for me. And I just looked and I was like, I do not want to be a soup. I don't want to have to answer to somebody and I just couldn't handle it. So I looked at my dad and said, I'm coming back to work with you until I can really get things settled in my head. Because the other thing I was grappling with too was the teaching and going into the classroom. So he didn't want me coming down, but eventually he had to acquiesce. He had to let me just go ahead and do what was right for me. And then at that point, there were no white guides with the exception of Richard and his dad. But by that time, no white guides. Only one white guide.
And then what year was that? Like
that was
90s?
91, 92. And so, when the shifts happened, when the changes came, again, it's the aspect of you look, and I know it was a lawsuit and all that they did, and ended up losing the lawsuit. They lost a lot of money trying to be able to stay to be able to sell tours on the ellipse. So what do? You change, you morph, you move off the ellipse, you move to a different area, and then you still find the success going on. And that's what happened. That's what happened in the 90s. We, instead of being there on the ellipse where people were crossing the street going back and forth to the White House, we were either down at the corner where the Commerce Department was, or what eventually happened when my dad scoped the spot out up by the northeast gate of the White House. You move, you shift, you find the cheese. That's it.
Oh, Who Moved My Cheese? Yeah, that's a good book too. Let me ask. Now, as we're coming out of Black History Month, can you share with us some unknown tidbits or facts that we may not know about the Martin Luther King Memorial?
Well, y'all realize there were both sides had quotes on. So one side, the quote that says, out in the mountain of despair, stone of hope, which was used for the design of the memorial. On the other side, it said, I was a drum major for justice, peace, and I have to go back and look at it, but I was a drum major for justice, peace, and righteousness. And when they did the dedication of the memorial, Maya Angelou is walking through. She's doing her thing. Children walking through. She gets to that quote. She loses her mind. She went full crazy behind that. And they were like, why are you upset? She's like, this isn't him. He'd never say that. And then you think about Dr. King. Dr. King never spoke in the first person about being the head of anything. Matter of fact, if you got to get the quote correct, in an interview, he was asked the question, what would you want people to say about you if something happened or when you passed away? And I'm paraphrasing the question. He said, if they were to say anything, let them say I was a drum major for peace. Let them say I was a drum major for justice and righteousness. Not I'm saying, let them say. So the head of the Build the Dream Foundation for the memorial was asked the question at the time, you gonna fix it? It's like, this memorial's done. It's over with. This is the power of social media at that time and what eventually happened. Dude had everything blown up saying, when you going to change the quote? For a whole year, when you going to change the quote? I jokingly tell folks when I'm talking about it at the memorial, I say, dude went to one of them high-level sports bars where the men get to go to the urinal, still had the TV screen going and watching your thing. He goes up to it and all of a sudden it changes. And it's like, how did you find me here? It doesn't matter. We ain't going to change the quote. And so the first anniversary of the memorial, they say that they're going to make some repairs and changes to it. It's 2013 that they finally are able to do the work. And because the way it's put together, it's not a solid piece of granite, it's 34 pieces. They can't chisel, but they can sandblast it out.
So it's 3 words that they're going to add?
They removed it.
They just removed it?
They just removed it. So I always jokingly say, while they were doing it, I went in one day, I lost my peace. And then I came in another day, my righteousness and justice was gone. And so now when you look up there, it just looks like, a lot of people think, I'm looking at the memorial the way it's always been. But I tell folks all the time, I could tell you when you were here in Washington, at least a short time period, if you took pictures of this memorial. If you have a picture with that quote in there, you were here between 2011 and July of 2013.
Oh, okay.
Wow. And at that point, I tell people,
it changed in 2013.
Yeah, it was removed in 2013. And that's how, I tell folks all the time, I can use your photographs to tell you when you were in D.C. Based on what was going on and what was being done at the time.
Now let me ask you, and I'm going to probably get a little personal now, because how do you deal with that? And I understand that you have children and you have a special needs child. How do you deal with the challenges of working a transportation business, and also rearing a special needs child?
Well, that's part of the reason why I came out the classroom. Kennedy, because I never had a problem putting her name out there. She's all over my musings of a special needs dad. She has complex chromosome rearrangement. If I was to go into the details of everything we deal with Kennedy, y'all would sit here and be like, how is he still here? Then is how is she still here? I know your daughter's probably seen her in school from time to time with her helmet on her head. I love the fact that SUTMA students actually watch out for the CRI students, some of them. But I had left the classroom because it got to the point she has a rare seizure disorder to go with it. So nothing like being in class. I get a phone call. I have to run and go get her from her school because my wife is at Children's Hospital working. She's gotten a position in what is as a parent navigator within the complex care clinic. So basically, her experiences helps other special needs parents. And so I'll come home. I started revamping and getting ready to put ELD Touring Enterprises back in the full spin. Never stopped. I just had my dad doing the tours. But at the point I get ready to leave the classroom, my dad has passed away. And I'm like, and to top it off, the particular year before I left the school, I ended up out on disability for 8 weeks because a kid ran into my knee and it was like toast.
Oh, wow.
So, I didn't have to have surgery, but they didn't want me working. So I had to do my PT. So I was doing tours. Then I checked with my doctor. I checked with the disability folks. They said you can only make X number of dollars. And also will stop your disability check. And, as long as it falls within your PT plan. So I need to walk a couple of miles a day to build the knee back up. So I was doing tours on that time period, 1 or 2 a week, and that was it.
So you do walking tours as well?
Not as much as I used to.
No. So you do, because when I think tours, downtown, you're in one of the double buses or one of the bus, but you do walking tours.
Yeah, I can do walking tours. I do, for me, my tour is a small group. So I'm in my minivan.
Okay.
And it has the hop on, hop off element because I'm dropping you off at a stop, let you head on around, pick you up, and keep on going. And we'll get into that, how that dynamic has changed up. But finish Frankie's question on with Kennedy. So when I stepped away from the classroom, it's a little rough because this was now ELD Touring Enterprises 2.0. And 2.0 missed out on about 6 years of what the environment changed. So I was on the beginning stages of the internet and how it was going to play things. I was ahead of everyone when I went back into the classroom. I had a couple of sweet deals that I made some mistakes on. So I was still ahead of everything. Website, being able to do credit card transactions. So I was paperless. And so all of that was in place, and then I step away and go back to the classroom. And when I come out, it's like, okay, the environment has changed some. It's going to take me a while to get caught up. How do I get into these areas?
Right.
But what it did was it allowed me to control the narrative for me work-wise. Now I could go to the doctor's appointments for Kennedy. So I do most of Kennedy's doctor's appointment. I took her to therapy today. I took the burden off of my wife, who had been doing it for the first 5-6 years of Kennedy's life, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna take this on to make things simpler for her, because while we kind of have these parallel paths going. ELD Touring Enterprises is growing in reputation. Her as a speaker and an advocate is growing at the same time. So, I told her, I said, my job is to make sure you can keep advancing forward the way you're advancing. I said, don't worry about me. I said, I'm going to be good, but my job is to make sure you're able to continue to do what it is that you're doing, because you're it's that important. It's something we talked about when we got married and she was still singing. I was like, my job is to make sure you be able to go and perform, which she was on her way to doing. And then for whatever reason, she says, oh, by the way, I'm going to let you know I'm pregnant. Really? So it was, so yeah, so that kind of, but I was still going to tell her, go ahead and pursue it. But, as she says to me, yeah, babies change your voice. So, so it gave me the ability.
I'm thinking about Rihanna now.
Yeah.
She was pregnant with one while she was out there doing her thing.
So, but it was a thing of where it allows me to now be there during the day when I'm really needed if something goes wrong. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm controlling the narrative. The tour that's the most popular for me are evening tours. So I'm not out during the day, I'll say 75% of the time. I'm moving into a time period where I'm going to be out during the day. It's not just downtown DC. I do day trips going up to Gettysburg Battlefield. I done made that network up in Gettysburg that I've set up. They missed me during the pandemic. I got up there one time in 2020. And when I hit the door, oh, Mr. Davenport, we didn't think we would see you this year. I was like, nah, you say it one time. But when I do have day tours, we kind of work it out so that if something comes up, I can still get loose. I adjusted tours to where they'd be shorter.
So what time are your tours running now? So
during the day, I've got like 3 different types of tours. But typically, if somebody's going to book a day tour, they got a choice between 3 hours and 5 hours. Typically, people are doing 3 hours. They only got a little bit of time, and so they want to get as much as they can get done in 3 hours. The game changer because of the pandemic is I went from booking per person to booking per group. So now I'm able to do a number of things with that. One, I'll come get you from your hotel or from wherever you stay. That's when you find out people are staying in old crack houses in Petworth.
Okay, so you do group rates, pick up the whole group, maybe about 4 or 5 people, and then
then we do the tour, and then at the end bring you right back home. Some people like, can you drop us off here? You drop us off here. We're going to do a late dinner. Can you do that? No problem. Can you pick us up from where we're doing dinner? No problem.
I think I was sharing with you, I think it was last year, what would be real spicy is a collaboration with your tour company and a yacht company.
Yeah, people are always asking me, the questions are always, what else can we do? Mm-hmm. Questions are, do you know of any boat tours? Do you know this, know that? It's, the way I look at it is, I'm not necessarily going to be a one-stop shop, but when you talk to me, I'm going to let you know their information. For me, customer service is paramount. I will go above and beyond, and I have one review from 5 years ago. The people did a review, didn't even take the tour because they got sick, but they liked the way in which I handled them getting their refund and everything for being sick. Came back, did the tour a year later. It was like, okay, we did a review talking about how good the customer service is. Here's a review about how good the tour is. Okay. So it was like 5 stars, and we didn't even go anywhere at 5 stars, and we did something. And we did go somewhere. So for me, it's like, it's the customer service angle. It's people hearing recordings, not getting phone calls back.
So you're actually speaking to them and giving them the human part of your tour, where others, like you said, the homeless guy, he can just.
But I mean, you look at Big Bus. Big Bus sometimes has a narrator on board. Sometimes they press in recording.
Right.
Trolley has a guide on board talking to you, but because you're not with the same guide, you're waiting for the next trolley to come through, you may have someone who's fantastic on the first trolley and is Bueller on the second one. So, you're with me. Or if I have another guide that I'll call in to help me out, you're with them the entire time. I don't bring anybody in who does not have my mindset. So I have a very limited circle of people that I deal with. That's part of the problem now with me having to look back into expansion mode. I have two sides that have happened. On the one side, the people that I had always dealt with, they died. So my dad's business partner, his son, my dad, and then my brother. And the most painful one was my brother because he had just come back in. We had just started putting stuff together.
You got sick.
And then and so it was gut wrenching to try to say, okay, how am I going to do this now? My buddy, whose daughter works with me, she was, well, I call her a tour guide mercenary anyway, because she's making money from her mom, from her dad, and from me when she does tours. But she really wanted to go back to, well, we encouraged her to go ahead and take a position as concierge. And because there were some things that being in a corporate setting, she couldn't get from us. We could not do healthcare. So like, even with me, with health insurance, when you are a small business, when you are an owner, and you have to be responsible for your own health care, you all of a sudden begin to understand, dang, it costs this much to do it? Okay.
So when you bring on a driver, I'm assuming a driver, you actually pay for their health care also?
Nope, it's totally contract. Okay. And that helps me avoid a lot of things. It's easier to do a 1099 than to do a W-2. It's just easier to draft that 1099 than a W-2 and having to remember to make the deposit, your 7 and was it 15%? So your 7.5% to match the 7.5% coming out of their paycheck to go to the IRS, to go into Social Security, unemployment insurance. No.
Okay.
No. On the accounting side, it's easier to put somebody on a 1099 because 9 times out of 10 is going to be seasonal anyway. It's only one job to job to job to job. It's not 5 days a week.
Oh, okay.
And so if it was a situation where I knew consistently 5 days a week this was going to happen, then I'm doing it. But again, the environment has changed, and right now, I got it real tight to where coming out of the pandemic, I'm still staying in one person operation.
So how many vehicles are in your fleet now?
So it's still just the 2 minivans.
Okay, so you have 2.
And in my network with a couple of bus companies.
Okay.
So when I get I've got a school group coming in April, and so I've got the bus for them. I just did a buddy of mine from Hampton called the school where he's working in, the Jamaican Youth Chorale was in town. They needed transportation for 4 days. Like, they're trying to figure it out. He goes, you know what? Let me call Daddy. Like, cool. Calls me up. Start putting everything together. Make my phone call. We straight. Okay, click. Send them the invoice. Here's how much it's going to cost. And then they come and everything runs through me as far as payment and everything. So it's like at that point.
In actuality, how many people are in your network? 4, 5, 6, 7?
I'm back down to where I'm just really dealing with 2.
2? Okay. So
I've got connections out there at about 10, but I only got 2 that I really call on.
So what you do when that question is asked now? How many vehicles do they have a piece?
Oh, plenty. So whenever anybody, if I'm going at it from strictly ELD Touring Enterprises, as far as well, we see you only use minivans. When people ask, do you have larger vehicles for bigger groups? Oh yeah.
There you go.
I mean, I'll never say yeah. The minivans are primary.
Right.
What you're asking for is maybe maybe 2 or 3 times a year. This is happening. I was just showing Maria my calendar. This week is like my last quiet week. I got only 2 evenings available in March, and April disappeared. May is just starting to book, and I'm just sitting back saying, okay, June and July haven't started, and I said that's going to happen sometime in.
So do people go to your website, or do they
go to my website,
okay,
or they can book on at TripAdvisor as well.
Okay,
TripAdvisor
so
your website. Can you customize a tour,
Oh, yeah.
or you have them set out? You go
It's-
from point A to point B, and this is what you see.
It's set up to where you've got a basic tour. You've got
Okay.
basic sites that people want to see.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you have some folks that have been to Washington 2 and 3 times, and they got these 1 or 2 places that they've never been to. So like with my evening tour, no, I don't stop for pictures at the White House. No, I don't stop for pictures at the Capitol building. You know, we do a quick drive by of those.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do the King Memorial in the evening. I do it with the day tour because of the Roosevelt Memorial next door to it. I linked the 2 up. So we go to the Jefferson Memorial, then we go across the bridge over to the Marine Corps Memorial, and then comes the stop that gets talked about the most on my tour, and that's the Pentagon Memorial. And a lot of people, one, don't realize that there's a memorial for the victims of the Pentagon. And then number 2 is it's the one stop where doesn't matter. I will get out to go with them through the memorial because it has to be explained. And there's a story behind it, and people will, they will ask different questions about the story. The Pentagon Memorial for me is where my teaching career and tour guide career cross, because one of the 6th graders who's memorialized from the DC Public Schools, the first cousin of a student that I taught. And so we get into, you start, again, I said it real early, it's one thing to know the facts, but when you start telling stories,
Right.
You have that personal story to it.
especially when somebody says, well, where were you at the time of the attack? And then I tell the story. It's like, I was on the north side of the White House. I was talking with my dad, his partner, one of the other guys, Secret Service officer, uniform officer comes by. We kind of shooting the breeze with him. He says, yeah, you know what we're about to do. I say, yeah, go disappoint those people to close the White House. He's walking down. And maybe about 2-3 minutes later, he's running back up. And he's running up, and he's trying to, and he just stopped long enough to say, guys, get out of here. There's one on the way in. So at that point, we're like, So we're moving to get to the vans to get away, because we're right by the train. At that time, Pennsylvania Avenue had already been closed off because of Oklahoma City. And so we were parked in what was basically a turnaround area at the time. And Gerald is in his van. He had brought a little portable TV with him, and he was just there watching TV. And then all of a sudden, you just hear him shout, "They hit the Pentagon! They hit it!" And people are running over to his van. I'm going out to 15th and New York. I stand in the middle of 15th Street looking in the direction of the Pentagon to see smoke. And I'm like, oh, crap. So it's just like that day turned into a whole bunch of stories. Gerald's story was the one that got me, because I didn't find out until we were over at the Pentagon doing a tour. And one of the things we did was, when we realized what was about to happen, while my dad and his partner froze, I'm a logistics person. Go. I said, you got to get out to Arlington. You got 8 people out there. You got to get out to Arlington before they close the city down. Wow.
So you all had dropped.
We had already had people in places.
Ah.
So Gerald gets out to Arlington. He can't come back into D.C. People are staying over in Maryland. So he has to do 395 all the way out to Woodrow Wilson Bridge to make their way up, because they even closed off GW Parkway. So he couldn't even go through Alexandria to shorten the trip. That takes him on 27. That takes him right by the building. That takes him by the smoke and the fire. And he sees it. And I was like, you never said anything about that. He's like, that's not something you really talk about too much. And I just kind of looked at him, and then he's like, well, look, it took you a while to tell me about the old lady, the scooter, and how she went flying past the Secret Service car. I said, all right, you got me there. So, but the story, that's where the storytelling comes in, but that's where, customizing the tour, people could say during a day tour, can we go over to the Pentagon? Now, depending on what police officer is working, I may or may not be able to park over there. That's dealing with different traffic laws, parking, all that. That's a whole nother story when you're in transportation. But it's tours can be customized. Somebody can say to me, we want to do an African American centered tour. I was like, really? Yeah, okay. And so, they're thinking, it's just going to be King Memorial, Lincoln Memorial. No, I'm at Mary McLeod Bethune's house. I'm at Carter G. Woods's house. I'm at Carter G. Woods's Memorial. I'm over at Phyllis Wheatley YWCA. I'm up at the Howard Theater, Duke Ellington statue.
Wow.
I'm at African American Civil War Memorial, Lincoln
I need to book
Theater,
a tour.
True Reformer Building. I'm just.
I think Crime Resource should book a tour and take the kids with them.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because
we'll be calling you.
Okay.
You can have some knowledge. Well,
Yeah. So the customizations can come in different ways. I tell people all the time, you can only customize to a point. Do not book a 3-hour tour. Start hollering at me. And we want to part of my 3-hour tour to go to Mount Vernon. No, no. That is. You look at the website. That's a whole separate thing by itself.
Mm-hmm. So they call you, you talk to them, you customize their tour.
Yeah, it'll be an email. A lot of times it's an email first. Mm-hmm. Some will call me and begin to describe what it is they want. And because I am mostly a visual learner, I'm auditory when I'm trying to put plans together to be able to see and start to hear where you're going. Mm-hmm. But I need you to now put that on paper so that when I start doing what I do, putting the itinerary together, giving you an idea of cost and everything, it's there for me to see it. It could be like right now, the 3-hour tour is $240, 6 people, and that's the day and the evening tour, because the evening tour is about 3 hours as well. $75 each additional hour. Now that's that's with the minivan. Mm-hmm. Once you get to bigger vehicles, the price changes because now I'm going into my network.
Okay.
And at that point, people are operating off of this. How much is it costing us per person? Mm-hmm. So I know that if I'm doing a tour, even let's say with 14 people, it's probably going to run roughly $700-800. So people are doing for 4 hours. So, but in 4 hours, but if they say we want to do an evening tour in the 3, you're paying for the 4 hours because of the vehicle.
Right, because of the vehicle.
Yeah, but in doing, when they do the math and they start to do the breakdowns, like, hold up, that's only X number of dollars per person. And when they start to look at things like companies like USA Guided, Signature Tour, even Old Town and Big Bus, they start saying, well, that's like $50 a person. Mm. And they're not coming to get us from where we're staying. Well, and
we're going to jump into this 60 seconds of fire. But before we do that, are there any more questions that you would have, Maria?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
So, what is the weirdest or strangest thing that has happened on the bus or during a tour? And are there any ghost tours in DC?
There are a couple of ghost tours. Mm-hmm. I'd have to go back and look at my files to see which ones are right there. But they do have some ghost tours.
I've never seen one. When I go to different places, it's some of the strange things I like to do.
Yeah. There are a couple of ghost tours because they mostly happen around the White House, around the area of the White House. The gentleman is in his colonial garb. Strange.
And he comes out.
Yeah, he'll come out and people book, and then he's walking around LaFont Plaza and.
You think is it real?
LaFont Plaza.
Or that's just something that they talk about?
No, it's real.
It's something they talk about. I'm like, that's all I say. It's something they talk. I mean,
they don't know whose name. Who is it?
Yeah, so
I'm gonna look it up now. I'm gonna do some Googling and find out.
Strange things. Okay, I'm gonna give the one for my dad first because it's 30 years later, and I'm still like. if he still wants me to look. He took a group of 25 people up to the Capitol to drop off to go into the Capitol. Told him what time he was going to be back to pick them up. I'm still looking for those 25 people today.
They never came back?
They come back.
So he dropped them off.
He dropped them off. Everybody,
and he had a pickup spot.
Yeah, and they never came back. And I'm sitting down like,
you know what happened to him?
The ghost.
The ghost man.
The ghost took him on a tour.
The ghost took him on a tour.
Yeah.
And then for me, there's the tour that I did, I think 3 years ago. And it was a wine tour. And it was a number of AKAs doing an evening wine tour. So the first drink, it was cool. Time we got halfway through the tour, I'm like, I wasn't even talking anymore. I was just letting them do their thing. And the bus driver who called me up to put the tour together and to be the guide, he's like, you want to say anything that important? I picked up my bottle of water. You tell me. I'll wait for them to say something.
They had fun.
Oh yeah, because
they brought their wine.
It was a wine, so they brought their own wine.
Oh,
they brought
okay.
And it's like it started off with a big old case of wine. By the time that tour ended, it was 2 bottles left. I'm like, who are the designated drivers? As we're going back to the party, I want to know who the designated drivers are.
I'm gonna drop them off.
Can't drop you off it because we got to go back to where they had the car parked. And I'm like, those AKAs was like, I think we did get off so they go to the White House to get a picture. We gonna go over to see Obama, and they're walking up there, and I'm walking behind y'all because I know Secret Service. And I'm like, I'm not going to get caught out there. And the next day, I got to hear from the day group, because they know. Scary. Oh, they went crazy up along that South Gate. And I'm just like, yeah. All right.
Well, can you share with the audience your contact info while I grab these 60 seconds of fire? Share how to get in contact with you, website, all that good information while I grab this.
Okay. So the website is www.eldtouring.com. Phone number is 301-395-1575. You can text the number. You can call the number. I tell folks it's better to email me, and that would be info@eldtouring.com. And either way, when you do reach out, I'll answer questions that you may have concerning a tour. I answer questions if there's a site that you really need to know something about and its accessibility. Can it be part of a tour? Emails work best because I can look, break it down, and send something back to you on what it would look like, cost of the tour if it fits within the profile with it being only 6 passengers, or if you're going to need a bigger vehicle and how to go ahead and make that work. It is, I'm not going to say 24 hours a day. I do shut my ringer off. I have to, because when you have international clients, Australia is at late in the evening at 2:00 in the morning here. Late in the evening tomorrow. Don't get me into timeline stuff. It gets real complicated. But if I'm up at 2 a.m. every once in a while, we'll see my phone ring, and I didn't believe you'd be all available at this time, Eddie. I'm like, yeah. Luckily for you, I just woke up. So, but yeah, typically, reasonable business hours. And of course, as I always tell folks, even when they call, if I don't answer, leave a voicemail, because that means I'm probably in the midst of a tour. And when I get the group dropped off, I will call you back or shoot you a text or do what I have to do to let you know I did receive your call.
All right. Well, we're going to jump into this 60 seconds of fire. And so now with this 60 seconds of fire, kind of rapid response, 1 or 2 word answer, maybe a sentence.
Okay.
And it's off the top of the dome.
Okay.
So, do you believe that you're more motivated? No, listen, I'm going to go to that one second. What do you believe your biggest but in life is? Meaning, I would have been here, but.
I would have probably been a college basketball coach, but said I would come out of the classroom when the kids were born.
Okay. What do you believe your greatest invisible asset means? We already know what an asset is, meaning your house, your car, your bank account. Those are assets. What do you believe your greatest invisible asset is, i.e., generosity, kindness, love? What do you believe your greatest invisible asset is?
Patience.
Okay. Patience. Okay.
Three girls, one special needs, taking care, also helping your mama out, and what? Patience.
Right. All right. Put this in order of importance to you. Financial security, legacy/impact, or love.
Well, first, definitely, because that's the only place where the patience comes from. Legacy and impact starting to really move up. Finding that out because former students have not disowned me. They are excited when they see me and hear from me. And then financial security, because constantly working on that anyway. But the other two, at least brings internal peace.
Mm-hmm.
Finances will always be a stressor. So even when you think you're secure, you're not.
Okay. And the last one. Life is about, complete the sentence.
Life is about serving others. I mean, it's some people would call it a weakness. Oh, you always want to help other people. But the fact is, as you're helping someone else, in essence, you're setting yourself up to be helped. Kennedy is like my prime example. Because of my interactions and dealing with her, and then having to dealing with her, the reason some of the things I have an ease in some of the things I'm dealing with Kennedy is because my first position at Douglas High School was a paraprofessional in special ed, helping there, serving there, not limiting those kids there. Fast forward to Kennedy, and I'm like, I'm able to bring people on the same page, doctors and all on the same page. Serving others means that when they walk away, they, one, will always have something good to say. But two, they will be encouraged to do the same thing, and then send people my way to say, hey, you need to understand, this is why we had this much fun. I'm serving you by sending you to him to serve you. And then just keep the circle going.
Oh, wow. Outstanding. Well, we're going to jump out of here, guys. We appreciate your time. You just stopping by for a little bit just to hear Eddie's story. Sinead, would you have anything else to say? No. Okay, Miss Maria?
I'll have some questions later.
Okay.
I got the feeling I'm going to be doing some offline answering.
All right. Well, we're going to jump out of here, guys. We're going to be off camera. This is your partner, Frankie P. And this is ELD Touring
Enterprises.
That's a whole lot.
Yeah, it is a whole lot. It's the only vain thing that I've done.
So we want to catch you guys on the next time. This is your partner, Frankie P. Remember, you change your perspective, you change your life. When you change your perspective, you change your life. When you change your perspective, you have service, you have patience. And guess what's going to happen, guys? You're going to change your life. Peace. We are out of here.